That noise stops now.
That's my hearing device! Step away from my son, now.
The hand came through the narrow space between seats 15B and 15C before Andre Bennett understood anyone was reaching for him. Cynthia Harrow's fingers closed around the white cane resting upright between his knees. She tugged once, impatiently, as if moving a coat sleeve from an armrest. Andre's grip tightened, but Cynthia pulled harder. The cane slipped free, struck the metal leg of the aisle seat, and skittered across the carpet. It rolled past row 16 and disappeared beneath the drink cart. Andre's right hand dropped at once, searching the space where the handle had been. His left found the edge of the seat in front of him, then the cold curve of the tray latch. Nothing matched the map he had built in his mind. 3 feet of cabin floor had changed, and with it, the shape of the world around him. He turned his head, trying to catch a voice through the hearing processor behind his right ear. The device answered with a thin warning tone. Cynthia, a white woman in a cream blazer, leaned forward. She had watched him since boarding, the cane, the plain black jacket, the way he counted seatbacks with his fingertips. She had already asked whether he was really assigned to premium comfort. No one had given her the answer she wanted. The processor chirped again. That sound has been going on long enough. Andre felt the vibration of her words more than he heard them. He lifted one hand toward the device, but Cynthia was faster. Her fingers pinched the processor behind his ear. The touch was sudden, intimate, wrong. Andre flinched. Before he could turn, she pulled it free. Sound collapsed. The engine became a distant pressure under his feet. Voices disappeared into movement. The cabin remained only through the tremor of seatbacks and shifting air against his face. Andre reached toward his ear. His fingers found skin, then nothing. His breath shortened. He kept both hands close, forcing himself not to sweep the space around him. He knew how quickly a blind black man's confusion could be renamed. One startled motion could become aggressive. One raised arm could become threatening. One frightened breath could become someone else's safety concern. Across the aisle, Elena Ruiz lowered her cup. Before takeoff, she had heard Cynthia ask a flight attendant, "Are you sure that passenger is supposed to be in premium?" Now Elena saw the small black processor in Cynthia's palm. Cynthia placed it on her tray beside sparkling water, then smoothed the cuff of her cream blazer. Her face settled. To her, the disturbance had ended. Andre's hands continued searching in tight, controlled movements. He touched the seatbelt buckle, the armrest seam, the fabric of his trousers. The cane was gone. The processor was gone. Someone behind him shifted, sending a tremor through the seat. Andre could not tell whether they were coming closer or moving away. Elena opened the camera on her phone and angled it toward Cynthia's tray, Andre's empty hands, and the aisle where the cane had vanished. At the rear galley, Elias Bennett heard the cane strike the floor before he ended the call. He knew that sound. He had heard it on sidewalks, in hotel corridors, and across the kitchen tile at home. He knew the difference between Andre setting the cane down and losing it. Elias lowered the phone and looked toward row 15. The white shaft lay beneath the drink cart, and Andre's right hand was searching beside his knee, careful and empty. Elias ended the call, set the phone on the galley counter, and drew one controlled breath. His first instinct was immediate: reach his son, take control, fix everything. He had spent years teaching himself not to confuse love with command. Then he stepped into the aisle and moved toward Andre. Cynthia glanced back at the tall black man stepping out of the rear galley. She saw gray at his temples, a plain dark jacket, and no uniform. Nothing about him suggested power in the way she recognized it. That mistake would matter. So would the words the crew had not yet spoken. In a few minutes, distressed, agitated, and confrontational would enter the record, and the difference between who received each word would become harder to explain than the incident itself. Elias moved toward row 15, eyes fixed on Andre, while Elena's camera began to record. 6 hours before the white cane rolled beneath a drink cart at 33,000 feet, Andre Bennett stood barefoot in the bedroom of his Baltimore apartment, packing for Denver by touch. The room held only the click of battery cases and the whisper of his Braille display. He checked 2 hearing processors, slipped a spare power pack into his carry-on, folded a backup cane along its joints, and connected his phone to the display resting on the bed. Battery, cable, cane, identification, conference notes. Elias Bennett stood near the door with his coat on, watching his son work. "You packed the second processor?" he asked. Andre kept reading the raised dots beneath his fingertips. "Yes. The backup cane, front pocket, charging cable?" Andre paused. He could hear enough of his father's voice to catch the concern beneath the questions. It was never only a cable. Elias had spent years preparing for the moment something failed. Andre zipped the side compartment and reached for his jacket. His fingers brushed Elias's hand inside the open carry-on. His father was checking the equipment pouch for the second time. "You can ask me," Andre said. "You don't have to inspect everything." Elias stopped with one hand inside the bag. "You're right," he withdrew it, closed the zipper, and stepped back. "I'm sorry." The apology was brief, but it had taken them years to reach it. When Andre's vision began narrowing in his early 20s, Elias responded the way pilots often responded to danger. Take control, remove uncertainty, prevent failure. He grabbed Andre's arm before curbs. He answered questions at medical appointments before Andre could speak. At restaurants, he ordered for him because reading menus took longer. In airports, he guided Andre by the elbow without warning. Elias called it protection. Andre experienced it as disappearance. Their worst argument came after a specialist spoke only to Elias for nearly 20 minutes. Andre sat there listening to two men discuss his future as though he were absent. Outside the office, Elias reached for his arm. Andre pulled away. "Stay beside me," he said, working to keep his voice level. "Don't stand in front of me." Elias went still. A man trusted to command aircraft through storms had no answer. That night they built a new language between them. 3 light presses against Andre's wrist. The first meant "I'm here." The second meant "You're not alone." The third meant "Your choice." Elias would offer the signal, then wait. No pulling, no answering for him, no deciding what came next. That morning, Andre slid his conference notes into the carry-on. He was flying to Denver to present a study on disabled travelers of color, built from a year of interviews with passengers who had been doubted, redirected, spoken over, or treated as problems before anyone asked what they needed. His argument was simple. Many barriers did not begin with blindness or hearing loss. They began when strangers mistook assistance for authority. Elias knew the presentation well. One line had stayed with him. A person can need help and still own every decision about their body. Andre lifted the bag from the bed. Elias reached for it by habit, then stopped before touching the handle. "Would you like me to carry that downstairs?" Andre turned toward his voice. A smile touched one corner of his mouth. He extended the bag. "That's better." Elias took it. Andre opened his cane and found the doorway with 2 measured taps. His father moved beside him, not ahead. Before they stepped into the hall, Elias touched the back of Andre's wrist and pressed 3 times. Andre pressed back. Neither man said what the signal meant. They no longer needed to. Harbor Point International Airport was crowded when Andre and Elias reached the priority lane. Announcements overlapped above the terminal, and suitcase wheels rattled across the polished floor. Andre moved at his own pace, the white tip of his cane tracing the carpet edge and the metal bases of the stanchions. A customer service agent stepped toward him and reached for his elbow without warning. Andre shifted back before she touched him. "Please ask before touching me." The agent froze. "Of course. I'm sorry." Then she turned to Elias. "What kind of assistance does he need?" Andre stood between them, holding his phone and boarding pass. Elias looked at the agent. "You can ask him." Andre explained that he heard best when someone faced him and spoke clearly. If the terminal noise became too strong, he could read through the braille display linked to his phone. He did not need to be led, and he did not need anyone to answer for him. The agent nodded too quickly and waved them toward the gate. At gate C-24, boarding for premium comfort had begun. Nicole Price stood behind the scanner, calling groups while checking the departure clock. Andre placed his phone over the reader. The machine flashed green. "Mr. Bennett, seat 15B, Nicole said. He took 1 step forward. "Sir, wait." Andre stopped. Nicole leaned toward the screen, then asked to see his identification and boarding pass again. 2 white passengers had gone through before him. Neither had been stopped after the green light. Elias watched Nicole study Andre's name, face, cane, and ticket as though one of them must be wrong. Andre handed over his identification without comment. He knew the cost of objecting too early. A question could become an attitude. An attitude could become delay. Behind them, Cynthia Harrow adjusted the cream handbag on her shoulder. Her gaze moved from Andre's plain black jacket to his cane, then up to the premium comfort sign. "Is he boarding with this group?" she asked Nicole. The question carried across the lane. Nicole looked down at Andre's ticket. "Yes, Mom, his seat is confirmed." Cynthia gave a small shrug. "I was asking because some people get confused by the lanes." Andre heard enough to understand. He turned toward her voice, but Cynthia had already looked away. Nicole returned his identification. "You're all set. No apology. No explanation for the second check." Elias stepped closer to the desk. "We were assigned seats together." Nicole opened the reservation. "You were. There was a last-minute adjustment." Andre remained in 15B. Elias had been moved to 16C. "He has a communication assistance note," Elias said. Nicole tapped through two screens. The note remained in the reservation, but its symbol had vanished from the cabin map after the seat change. "The flight is nearly full," she said. "The crew can sort it out on board." Elias's jaw tightened. Andre sensed it and touched the back of his father's once, a reminder rather than the full signal. "1 row," Andre said. "I'll be fine." Elias did not like it, but he nodded. Inside the aircraft, Tyler Grant greeted passengers at the entrance to Premium Comfort. Cynthia reached Tyler before Andre took his seat. She lowered her voice, though not enough. "Are you sure that passenger is supposed to be in Premium?" Tyler looked at Andre, then at the white cane in his hand. He asked for the boarding pass. Andre held it out. Tyler examined it longer than the seat number required. 15B, he finally said. The ticket was valid. Still, he turned toward Elias. "You may need to keep an eye on him." Andre stood between the two men, his hand wrapped around the cane handle. No one asked what he needed. Nearly an hour after takeoff, the cabin had settled into the dull rhythm of a long flight. Window shades were half drawn. Laptops glowed against lowered faces. Renee Carter stopped beside Elias in row 16. "Mr. Bennett, operations is trying to reach you about tomorrow's evaluation schedule." The name meant nothing to her. His employee photograph had been taken years earlier, before the gray at his temples. Elias glanced toward Andre 1 row ahead. He touched the back of his son's wrist and pressed 3 times. Then he traced 4 words into Andre's palm. "Back in 4 minutes." Andre nodded. Elias waited until Andre touched his wrist in return, then followed Renee toward the rear galley. Andre opened the braille display connected to his phone. The pins rose and fell beneath his fingertips with a quiet mechanical chatter. Every few moments, he tapped the rubber tip of his cane against the carpet, then the metal base of the seat in front of him. Floor, seat. A simple map rebuilt through sound and vibration. Cynthia Harrow sat directly behind him. The first tap made her look up from her tablet. The second tightened her mouth. By the fourth, she pushed the toe of her shoe into Andre's seat frame. He did not turn. She kicked it again. Andre kept reading. The vibration blended into the movement of the aircraft. Cynthia leaned forward and struck the seat back with 2 sharp knuckles. Still nothing. She pressed the call button. Tyler arrived with the careful smile of someone trying to keep every inconvenience small. "What can I do for you, Mom?" Cynthia pointed toward Andre. "He has been making that noise since we took off. The tapping, the clicking, all of it. It's deliberate." Tyler looked at the cane between Andre's knees and the braille display on his lap. He did not step where Andre could detect him. He did not type a message or touch the seat to announce himself. He asked Cynthia, "Has he responded when you spoke to him?" "He ignored me." She lowered her voice. "I paid extra for this section. There should be standards." Tyler glanced toward the rear galley. "I'll get the lead attendant." He left without asking Andre a single question. Cynthia watched him go, then leaned through the gap between the seats. She caught the cane below the handle and pulled. Andre's grip closed too late. The cane struck a seat leg, rolled down the aisle, and disappeared beneath the drink cart. Andre's hand dropped toward the empty space. The processor behind his ear gave a warning chirp. Cynthia's eyes fixed on it. "That sound has been going on long enough," she said. She reached forward, removed the processor, and placed it on her tray beside her glass. Andre recoiled. The cabin vanished into pressure and vibration. His hands moved through the space before him, careful at first, then faster. Cynthia leaned away. "Look at him," she said to Elena across the aisle. "He's getting aggressive." Andre had not left his seat. His palms were open. He was searching for the objects she had taken. Elena set down her drink and raised her phone. Renee returned first. She saw the cane beneath the cart, Andre's empty hands, and the black processor on Cynthia's tray. "Mom, step away from that device. Now." Cynthia folded her arms. He was disturbing everyone. Renee lifted the processor with a clean service cloth. The casing was scratched, and the battery cover had come loose, so she kept it powered off until Elias returned. Daniel Cho, seated across the aisle, touched the hearing aid behind his own ear. "That isn't entertainment equipment," he said. "You don't remove it from someone." Cynthia looked at Daniel, then at Andre, who sat rigid and silent in front of her. Then someone should have placed him somewhere better equipped. The nearby rows went quiet. No one asked what she meant. At the rear galley, Elias heard the cane strike the floor, lowered the phone, and looked toward row 15. Elias reached row 15 and saw Andre searching the air with both hands. His son's fingers moved in short, controlled sweeps, never far from his body, as though even panic had to stay within rules no one else had been asked to follow. Elias's first instinct was to grab him, pull him close, and put the world back where it belonged. His hand rose, then stopped. He remembered the doctor's office years earlier. Andre pulling away. "Stay beside me. Don't stand in front of me." Elias lowered himself into the aisle and placed the back of his hand beneath Andre's right palm. He did not seize his wrist. He waited. Andre's fingers found him, traced the ridge of his knuckles, then closed lightly around his hand. Only then did Elias press 3 times against his wrist. "I'm here. Your choice." Andre's shoulders remained tight, but his breathing began to change. The quick, shallow pulls slowed. Elias found the cane beneath the drink cart and examined every section, running his thumb along the shaft before checking the rubber tip. No cracks. He placed it against Andre's leg where he could feel it. Then Elias opened the inside pocket of his jacket and removed the spare processor. He rested it in Andre's palm and traced the words carefully. "Spare device." Andre nodded. Elias fitted the processor behind his ear, secured it, and waited while the device connected. The engine hum returned first, faint and uneven. Then nearby voices arrived as broken edges of sound. Andre swallowed. His face had gone still in the way Elias knew meant he was holding more emotion than he wanted anyone to see. "Do you want to move?" Elias asked, facing him so Andre could catch his words. Andre shook his head. When he spoke, his voice trembled once before settling. "I want my seat. I want her statement recorded, and I want them to speak to me." Elias felt anger press against his ribs, hot and immediate. He let it pass without answering for his son. "All right." Colin Mercer arrived from the forward cabin with Tyler close behind him. Tyler had reported an out-of-control passenger. The phrase reached the aisle before Colin did. Cynthia leaned forward at once. "That man rushed at me," she said, pointing toward Elias, and his son was swinging his arms everywhere. Elena lifted her phone. Neither of those things happened. Colin glanced at the screen but did not ask to see the video. His attention settled on Elias kneeling beside Andre. "Sir, step back. Your presence is escalating him." Elias looked up. "He is calming down." Cynthia pressed one hand to her chest. "I'm the one who feels unsafe." Colin turned toward her, his voice softening. "I understand you're distressed." Then he looked at Andre, who sat with both hands resting flat on his thighs, the cane against his leg. "We need the agitated passenger moved." Renee stood beside the drink cart, watching Colin's face. "Which passenger?" she asked. The question was quiet. It cut through the cabin anyway. Colin's jaw tightened. "There are 2 open seats near the rear. Mr. Bennett and his father can move there so we can prevent another incident." Cynthia would remain where she was. Andre turned toward Colin's voice. "Why am I being moved after she took my equipment?" Colin adjusted the tablet under his arm. "We're trying to prevent further confrontation." "What confrontation?" Elena asked. Colin did not answer her. Elias rose slowly, careful not to crowd anyone. He could have ended the uncertainty with one identification card. He could have watched every uniform in the aisle change posture. He left the card in his pocket. Then record exactly who touched whom, he said. Colin looked at him for a long second. Around them, the words had already divided the cabin. Cynthia had been distressed. Andre had been agitated. Elias had become confrontational. The woman who took the equipment was being protected from the man still seated without it. The argument did not end so much as thin into a silence nobody trusted. Colin stepped away with his tablet held tight against his chest. Cynthia remained in 16B, her cream sleeve folded neatly over the armrest, as though order had been restored simply because no one had forced her to move. Andre stayed in 15B. His spare processor had reconnected, but the sounds around him arrived in broken pieces, too sharp one moment, too distant the next. Renee looked at the nearby rows, then at the aisle seat beside Andre. Before she could ask, the businessman in 15C unbuckled himself. "I'll switch with his father," he said. He made no speech. He gathered his laptop, nodded once to Elias, and moved to one of the open seats near the rear. Elias sat beside Andre without touching him. That choice mattered. Elena lowered her phone until the camera pointed at the carpet. Andre's breathing had steadied, but his hands still held the cane too tightly. "May I keep recording the crew in the aisle?" she asked. Renee repeated the question while facing Andre. He listened, then nodded. Elena raised the phone again, careful to keep Andre's face out of the frame. Across the aisle, Daniel Cho opened the Notes app on his phone and typed with both thumbs. Daniel showed the message to Renee. With Andre's permission, she typed it into the Notes app on his phone, and the words rose beneath his fingers on the Braille display. "I use hearing aids too. I saw her take yours." Andre read the sentence twice. His grip on the cane loosened a fraction. "Thank you," he said. Daniel touched the device behind his own ear and gave a small nod. No pity, no performance, just recognition. In row 14, Gloria Hayes reached into her tote and removed a bottle of water. She was a black woman in her late 60s, dressed in a blue travel coat, her silver braids gathered at the nape of her neck. She placed the bottle near Andre's tray, but stopped before her hand entered his space. "Would he like this within reach?" she asked Renee. Renee turned toward Andre. "Miss Hayes has water. Would you like it beside your right hand?" "Yes, please." Only then did Gloria slide it closer. Cynthia watched from behind them, her mouth tightening. The contrast settled over the cabin without explanation. One woman had taken something attached to Andre's body because it bothered her. Another had asked permission before moving a bottle 6 inches. Near the galley, Tyler reopened Andre's reservation. The assistant's note appeared beneath the booking record, active from the moment Andre checked in. On the cabin map, the symbol was gone. Tyler followed the timeline and found the last-minute seat change at the gate. "The seat change removed the alert from our cabin screen," he told Colin. Colin did not lower his voice enough. "We're not discussing system errors in front of passengers." Tyler looked up. Nearly everyone from rows 14 through 18 was listening. A man removed his headphones. A woman closed her laptop without taking her eyes off Colin. Another passenger shifted into the aisle seat so Elena's view would remain clear. No one coordinated it. No one needed to. The cabin had reached a quiet agreement. Nothing else would happen unwitnessed. Tyler looked back at the screen. For the first time, he understood how easily he had accepted Cynthia's version. She had spoken first. She had sounded certain. Andre had needed another way to answer, and Tyler had treated the delay as absence. He remembered looking at the cane before looking at the boarding pass. He remembered speaking to Elias while Andre stood between them. Each choice had felt too small to matter. Together, they had built the path to this moment. Renee crouched beside Andre, so her face remained within the narrow range of his remaining vision. "How do you want us to communicate with you for the rest of the flight?" Andre rested one hand on the cane and the other beside the water Gloria had placed within reach. "Ask me first," he said. "That is enough." Ray nodded. "Understood." The answer moved through the nearby rows more quietly than any announcement. Elias heard it and felt pride mixed with shame. Pride that Andre had spoken for himself. Shame that so many people needed the lesson. Behind them, Cynthia turned toward the window. Her reflection stared back from the dark glass, surrounded by faces no longer willing to look away. Nearly 40 minutes passed before the cabin began to resemble an ordinary flight again. The drink cart moved. Laptop keys clicked. The engine held its steady note beneath the floor. Andre sat in 15B with his braille display balanced across his thighs, reading the final pages of his Denver presentation. His fingers moved over the changing pins at an even pace. Elias remained beside him, close enough to help, far enough to leave the space under Andre's control. He did not hold his son's wrist. He did not watch every movement. That restraint had taken him years to learn. Behind them, Cynthia Harrow had offered no apology. She had spent the quiet stretch arranging herself into the role of the injured passenger. Each time someone looked toward her, she lowered her eyes or pressed her lips together, performing the tired dignity of a woman surrounded by unreasonable people. When Tyler passed her row, she touched his sleeve. "I need to be moved," she said. "Those two have gathered half the cabin against me. This feels like intimidation." Tyler stopped but did not lean toward her as he had before. "I can't authorize an upgrade or compensation right now. Then find someone who can." Cynthia glanced at Elias. "I should not have to sit behind people who are creating this much tension." Tyler looked toward Andre. He was still reading, one hand resting beside the water bottle Gloria had placed within reach. "Please remain in your assigned seat," Tyler said. Cynthia stared at him, surprised by the refusal. Before she could answer, the aircraft dipped through a pocket of rough air. The seatbelt sign chimed. At the same moment, the spare processor released a brief status tone. Cynthia's head snapped toward it. "I knew he would start that again." Elias turned at the sound of her voice. He saw Cynthia lean forward, but the seatback blocked his view of her hand. She reached through the narrow opening between the seats, fingers aimed at the processor behind Andre's ear. Andre felt air move near his neck, then the approach of a hand he could not identify. His body reacted before thought caught up. He pulled back and raised his forearm to shield the device. His elbow struck the water bottle. It tipped across the tray, spilling over his notes and the edge of the seat. Cynthia recoiled. "He came at me." Colin, approaching from the galley, saw only the raised arm, the spilled water, and Cynthia pressed against her seat. He stepped into the aisle. "Keep your hands where I can see them." The cabin went still. Andre could not locate Colin precisely. The cabin noise and overlapping voices reduced Colin's command to broken fragments, but the warning in his tone was clear. He lowered both hands slowly to his thighs. Elias rose. He moved between Andre and the gap in the seats, placing his body where Cynthia's hand had been without touching her. "Step away from my son's equipment." Colin turned on him. "Sir, sit down before this becomes a security issue." Elena stood just high enough to be seen above the seatbacks, her phone steady in front of her. She reached for him first. "I have it on video." Daniel spoke next. "I saw it." Gloria's voice followed from across the aisle. "So did I." A businessman in row 17 closed his laptop. He never left his seat. Colin looked from face to face, searching for the uncertainty that had protected his first report. There was none. Tyler stood near the galley curtain, pale and motionless. Colin looked at him. "You were closest. What did you see?" Tyler swallowed. This was the moment when silence would have been easier. He could have protected his supervisor, preserved the report, and told himself the angle had been unclear. Instead, he looked at Andre's wet tray, Cynthia's hand still hovering near the gap, and the passengers who had watched every second. "They're right," he said. She reached through the seats. Cynthia's face changed. "You weren't even looking." "I saw her arm between the seats," Tyler said. Mr. Bennett reacted after she reached for the device. No one applauded. The witnesses spoke, then stopped. Their silence left Colin alone with the facts. He could no longer turn a defensive movement into a threat or reduce Cynthia's choice to a complaint about noise. Too many people had seen the beginning. Too many had heard the words used afterward. Colin lowered his tablet. For the first time, he looked less like the man controlling the incident, and more like a man realizing the incident had been controlling him. The turbulence eased, and the aircraft leveled. A minute later, the cockpit door opened and Captain Rebecca Sloan stepped into the cabin. She moved with the calm of someone used to entering rooms after other people had made them unstable. Colin met her near row 15. "We have a combative passenger who refused crew instructions and made another traveler feel unsafe." Renee stood beside him. "Captain, that description leaves out what happened first." Rebecca did not answer immediately. Her eyes moved across the scene. Elena's phone was recording. Andre held the white cane across his lap. Water had spread over the tray table and darkened his conference notes. Cynthia sat rigid behind him. Elias stood between the rows, not blocking the aisle or touching anyone. Rebecca turned to Colin. "Did anyone touch his equipment?" Colin's mouth opened, then closed. Cynthia answered for him. "I only moved it because no one else would handle him." The spare processor carried enough of her voice to Andre for the words to land. His jaw tightened. "Handle him, not speak to him, not ask him, handle him." Rebecca looked at Elias. "Sir, identify yourself." Elias reached into his jacket and removed a worn leather wallet. He opened it without flourish. "Captain Elias Bennett, Senior Check Captain, Meridian Coast Airlines." Rebecca's face changed with recognition. Colin lost color. Tyler straightened near the galley curtain. Cynthia stared at the identification card, then at Elias, as if the man before her had become someone else. "I didn't know who you were," she said. Her voice had lost its edge. Elias held her gaze. "You knew he had a cane. You knew the device was attached to his body. You knew the seat was his. That was enough." He closed the wallet and stepped back half a pace. He would not let his title turn Andre into a supporting character in his own humiliation. Andre opened the text-to-speech application on his phone. His fingers moved across the braille display, correcting one word before sending it. The electronic voice came through the speaker, flat and clear. "You believed her discomfort before you believed my ticket, my equipment, or me." No one spoke for several seconds. Rebecca asked Elena to show her the video. She watched Cynthia reach through the seats, Andre recoil, the waterfall, and Colin arrive after the beginning had passed. Renee described the first incident. Daniel confirmed the processor had been removed. Gloria explained that Andre had remained seated. Tyler gave his account last. His voice shook, but he did not retreat. "I accepted Ms. Harrow's complaint before I found a way to communicate with Mr. Bennett. The second time I saw her reach for the device." Rebecca turned to Colin. "What specific action supports the word combative?" Colin looked at Andre's hands resting on the cane. He raised his arm. "After someone reached toward his ear? Yes. Did he leave his seat? No. Did he threaten anyone?" Colin hesitated. "Not verbally." Rebecca's expression hardened. "Then describe what happened. Do not replace it with a label." She directed Tyler to move Cynthia to an open seat near the rear galley, away from Andre. Renee and Tyler would file separate statements. The cabin records, seat change history, and incident notes would be preserved. Ground personnel would meet the flight in Denver. No one was fired in the aisle. No punishment arrived at altitude. Cynthia gathered her handbag and stood. As she passed Andre, the passengers watched her in silence. No one applauded. No one looked away. Flight 380 touched down in Denver under a pale afternoon sky. By the time the aircraft reached the gate, ground personnel were already waiting at the end of the jet bridge. Cynthia Harrow was asked to leave first and speak privately with airport security and a Meridian Coast representative. No handcuffs. No shouting. No public spectacle. She walked between them carrying her cream handbag, her posture stiff, still trying to look like the person who had been inconvenienced. Andre remained seated until the aisle cleared. When a representative offered to take his statement through Elias, Andre turned toward the voice. "I'll give it myself." Elias sat beside him in the quiet gate office and said nothing unless Andre asked. It was the kind of silence he had once found impossible. Tyler arrived 10 minutes later with his phone open to a blank note. He typed, then placed the screen where Andre could connect it to his braille display. "I listened to the first person who sounded certain. I should have found a way to ask you." Andre read the sentence slowly. Tyler stood with both hands clasped in front of him, waiting for forgiveness he had not earned. Andre typed back, "Remember that next time." Tyler nodded. The answer was not warm, but it was fair. Elena met Andre outside the office and transferred the original video to his phone before posting anything. "You decide what should be public," she said. Andre asked her to remove the moments when he had been disoriented and keep the parts that showed the choices around him. The clip began with Andre's processor lying on Cynthia's tray as she said he was disturbing everyone. It cut to Colin calling her distressed while describing Andre as agitated. It ended with the electronic voice from Andre's phone. "You believed her discomfort before you believed my ticket, my equipment, or me." The video spread faster than any of them expected. By the fourth day, it had passed 12 million views. Andre declined morning shows that wanted slow-motion footage of his hands searching the air. He refused interviews framed around tragedy. "I'm not interested in becoming an object lesson in suffering," he told one producer. "The lesson is what people chose before they knew who my father was." Meridian Coast opened a formal review that lasted several weeks. Investigators confirmed Cynthia had interfered with Andre's equipment twice. Colin's reports relied on labels instead of observed behavior. Tyler had failed to communicate directly with Andre, but corrected his account before landing. Renee had followed proper procedure once she understood what happened. The seat change had removed the assistance alert from the cabin display, even though it remained in Andre's reservation. Cynthia was barred from flying with Meridian Coast for an extended period. Her employer, where she served as a senior human resources director, opened its own review. She left the position before the process ended. Colin was suspended from supervisory duties while the airline reviewed his decisions. Meridian Coast did not present the event as one bad employee making one bad choice. Its final statement admitted the crew had been trained to quiet the cabin faster than they had been trained to verify the truth. The airline changed 4 rules. Employees had to ask before touching a passenger or an assistive device. Incident reports had to describe specific actions instead of relying on words such as aggressive or non-compliant. Assistance notes could no longer disappear after a seat change. Passengers with disabilities had to be asked directly how they wanted to communicate. Renee joined the group rewriting the training program. Tyler volunteered for sessions led by people who used canes, hearing devices, wheelchairs, and communication tools in daily life. Andre watched the reforms without pretending policy alone could change instinct. He wrote an essay titled, "Ask Before You Touch." Elias expected the piece to mention his position with the airline. It did not. The final paragraph asked one question: what would have happened if my father had not worked for Meridian Coast? Andre left it unanswered. He knew the silence after that question carried more weight than any title could. 3 months later, Andre Bennett stood beneath the white lights of the Barrier-Free Travel Conference in Denver, with his cane resting against the front of the podium. More than 200 aviation executives, flight attendants, airport planners, and accessibility advocates filled the ballroom. Some had watched the video from Flight 380. Others had read his essay. Andre did not ask which ones. He had no interest in retelling every insult or reciting the penalties handed down afterward. Cynthia's name never appeared on the screen behind him. Neither did Colin's. There were no view counts, no dramatic clips, no photograph of Elias holding an employee card in the aisle. Andre lifted the cane instead. The room quieted. "Ask before you touch." His voice came through the microphone steady and unhurried. He held the cane horizontally across both palms. "This is not luggage. It is not a decoration. It is not a problem another passenger gets to solve because the sound bothers them." His fingers moved along the handle, familiar with every worn edge. A person can need assistance and still own every decision about their body. Those two things do not cancel each other out. In the last row, Elias sat with his hands folded over one knee. He had been offered a seat near the stage and declined it. The day did not belong to him. He watched Andre explain how small choices created either safety or harm, speaking directly to the passenger, describing actions instead of assigning labels, waiting for consent before guiding someone through a doorway. Andre never raised his voice. He did not need to. The room listened more closely because he refused to perform pain for them. When the applause came, it was brief and respectful. Andre stepped away from the podium before anyone could turn the moment into a celebration of endurance. Elias remained seated until his son had finished speaking with two airport employees who wanted advice on a new training program. He did not interrupt. He did not answer questions directed at Andre. Later, the two men walked through the conference's aviation exhibit hall. One display held a large wing model designed for visitors with limited vision. Raised lines showed air moving above and below the surface. Small textured arrows marked pressure changes along the leading edge. Andre placed both hands on the model and followed the patterns slowly. Elias stood close enough to hear the movement of his fingers over the material. "The upper flow is faster," Andre said. "That's what the texture means." "You've got it," Andre smiled. "I know." They moved toward another display across the room. The route narrowed between a row of chairs and a metal support column. Elias saw the obstacle before Andre's cane reached it. His old instinct returned. He lifted a hand toward his son's elbow, ready to guide him around the column. His fingers stopped inches away. Andre felt the shift in air and the silence beside him. He knew exactly what his father had almost done. For years, that hesitation would have irritated him. Now it carried a different meaning. Elias was learning to pause before love turned into control. Andre extended his wrist. Elias placed 2 fingers against it and pressed 3 times. "I'm here. Your choice." Andre answered with 3 presses of his own. Then he lowered the cane, found the base of the column, and traced a clear path around it. Elias followed without giving directions. At the edge of the exhibit hall, Andre folded the cane, checked the joints, and opened it again with one practiced motion. The exit lay beyond a wide corridor filled with voices, rolling equipment cases, and footsteps crossing in several directions. Andre moved into the flow. Elias stayed 1 step behind. He did not hold his son's arm. He did not announce every obstacle. He stayed near enough to be present and far enough to leave the path in Andre's hands. Andre could not see his father walking behind him, and he could hear only the faint rhythm of footsteps beneath the exhibit hall noise. He did not need Elias to lead. He only needed to know the man was there 1 step back, finally understanding that love did not have to stand in the way. If Andre's story stayed with you, like the video and subscribe for more stories about dignity and justice. Which moment affected you most, and where are you watching from? Tell us in the comments.